I want to first look at a story that's brought in the Gemara.
This is all set, the state, it didn't get stapled.
A story that's brought in the Gemara about one of the Asarah, Harugeh, Malkhut, one of the 10 martyrs. Our rabbis tell us that the Roman emperor decided when the period of oppression began, and the days were winding down to when they were going to destroy the Bet HaMikdash. It says that he decided to play a little game with the Jews. He says, "I want to start learning some Torah." So he starts learning some Torah, and he reads the portion where the Jewish people, the brothers, sell Yosef. And then he gets to the part where it says that a kidnapper, the punishment is death. So he says to the rabbis of the generation, he says, "I don't think the Torah did what it was supposed to. The brothers should have been killed for the fact that they kidnapped Yosef. So we don't have a time machine, we can't go back." So he says, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to take the 10 greatest rabbis of this generation, and then they'll be killed for the 10 brothers that were responsible for selling Yosef." And our rabbis tell us the gruesome stories of each one of the rabbis' demise at the hands of the Romans. So I want to take a look at one of those, and then some other things I wanted to share. So the story here is the story on it's a page that looks like this. Again, I'm sorry for the debacle with the sheets. This is a story brought down in the Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah. It says that Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion was one of the great Tanaim. Him, his wife, and his daughter were all taken at the same time to be meted out different judgments that were given to them. So it says, "B'sha'ah she'yatzu shloshtam," when the three of them were taken out by the Romans, "Sadku alehem et kadin." They said Tziduk Kadin, they said Hashem is righteous. The rabbi said Hasur Tamim Ha'ala, God, the rock of the Jewish people, is perfect in what he does. V'ishto Amra, his wife said, El Yamura ben Abel, he's a God of faith and he does nothing wrong. V'ito Amra, his daughter said, Gadol ha'etzav v'arava aliyah, God is great in wisdom. Asher enecha pikuchot al kol derachei bnei adam, that God is watching everything. So the father, the wife, and the daughter all said God is righteous for what he's doing. Amari Rabbi observed this. He said, "Kama gedolim tzadikim." He says, "How great are these righteous people? Shenizdamnu lahen shalosh mikraot shel siduk hadin." That while they're being led to their demise, each one of them thought of a different pasuk expressing God's righteousness. Okay, so I'm gonna. Okay. Then the Gemara goes on to say, how did it come to be that Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion was ordered to death in the first place? It says, "K'shechala Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma." When Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma, who was an elder rabbi of the generation, was sick, halach Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion levakero. Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion went to visit him. Amar lo, the rabbi said to him, "Hanina achi," says, "My brother Hanina, iyata yodea shu mazo min hashemayim nifua." Don't you know that this kingdom has been, granted permission by heaven? They've already destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. They burned down his sanctuary. They killed his righteous people. They banished the good people of the Jewish people. And they're still surviving. So clearly it's ordained by God that this should be going on. I heard about you, Hanina. You're sitting and learning Torah, and you're gathering congregations, you're teaching Torah publicly, which was not allowed. You're holding on to a Sefer Torah in public. So Rabbi Hanina answers him. He says to him, "Amad lo min hashamayim irachamu." So the rabbi says, God will have mercy on me. So the rabbi, the elder rabbi, says to him, "Amar lo, ani omer lecha dvarim shel ta'am." I'm telling you logical things. I'm telling you, don't you see the writing on the wall? Don't you see that the end is near? V'ata omer li min hashamayim irachamu. Says, and you're telling me God will have mercy on me? Tamea ani, I'll be shocked. Im lo yisrifu atcha v'et haSefer Torah ba'esh. If they don't burn both you and the Sefer Torah that you're holding together. So he says to him, "Amar lo Rabbi, ma ani lechaya olam haba." He says, if that's true, if I'm basically I have a death wish, I'm suicidal, am I going to get into olam haba? He said to him, Amar lo kluma aseh b'aleyatcha? Tell me, has anything good happened to you this year? Amar lo ma'ot shel Purim nitchafu li b'ma'ot shel tzedakah. It says, my Purim money got mixed with my tzedakah money. Now the law is a person has to have separate budgets for his regular tzedakah and the tzedakah that he gives on Purim. He says, my money got mixed. V'chilakim la'aniyim. I gave it all to the aniyim, meaning he put it all in his tzedakah budget and he had to pay separately for Purim. So the rabbi said to him, Amar lo im ken michalkecha yeh chalki. He says, if that's true, if that's what happened to you recently, he says, then my portion be like your portion. May my fate be like yours. Meaning, yes, you're going to get into Olam Haba. Amrulo, they said to him, Ayu yamim mu'atim, ad sheniktara BeYosef ben Kisma. It was only a few days after this meeting between Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion and Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma that Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma passed away. Ve'alchu kol gedolei Romi levakero. All of the great men of Rome went to visit this rabbi. They went to his funeral and they gave eulogies. Hesped gadol. On their way back from the funeral, so you see the hypocrisy. On the one hand, they were showing and saying, "Oh, we love the Jews. We're nice. We're not anti-Semitic." They went to the rabbi's funeral. On the way back from that same funeral, they found Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion sheya yoshev v'osek b'Torah. He was learning Torah, umakil ki lo b'rabim, and teaching Torah publicly. V'sefer Torah munach lo b'chetor. He's holding a sefer Torah. Heviyu v'krachu b'sefer Torah. They wrapped him in that sefer Torah. They wrapped him in reeds and fabric, and they lit him on fire. They took tufts of wool, they soaked them in water, and they packed them to his chest, so he wouldn't be able to die quickly. He wanted to drag it out. Amralo Bito, his daughter, they made his daughter watch this. Amralo Bito, Abba, Father, erech bekach, do I have to see you like this? So he responds to her, Amarla, ilmale ani nisrafti levadi. He says, if I were being burned alone, hayaha davar kasheli. He says, I would have been worried. Achshav she'ani, turning the page, she'ani nisraf, the Sefer Torah, I'm being burned along with the Sefer Torah. Misha mevakesh elbona shel Sefer Torah. The person who seeks to avenge the desecration of the Torah, meaning God, hu yivakesh elboni. Now I'm assured that he will avenge my death. Amrulo talmidah. The student said to him, Rabbi ma taroeh? Rabbi, what do you see? Amar lahem gilayon israfin. I see the parchment being burned, v'otiyot porechot. And the letters, though, are floating in the air. Meaning the rabbi is saying, I see the physical Torah being burned, but the lessons of the Torah are eternal. You can't burn the spirit of the Torah. So I see the letters, the lessons of the Torah, flying up to heaven. So they said to him, the students, they said, Afata, you too. Patach picha, open your mouth, v'tikanes b'cha ha'esh, and let the fire, let the smoke go into your mouth so you can die and you could go up to heaven also. Amar lahen, he said to them, Mutav shitelena mishenetana. He says, it's better that the person that gave me my soul should take it. A person should not afflict himself, a person should not cause himself to die. So up until now, we see the horrific torment of the rabbi and the great emunah. He's not, he's maintaining his composure, he's talking to his students. And we see that he's not ready to die. He wants to continue to live. Amar lo kaltstinori. The executioner said to him, Rabbi, imani marbeh b'shal hevet. If I increase the fire, v'notel sfogin shel semen, and I remove the wool from on you, ma'ali becha, atam mevi'eni l'chayal ha'olam haba. Will you bring me into the world to come? Amar lo hen. He said yes. He said hishabali. He said swear to me. Hishbalo. The rabbi swore. Miyad hirbah b'shal hevet. Immediately the executioner increased the fire. V'natal sfogin shel semen ma'ali bo, and he removed the wool from his chest. Yatza'a nishmato b'mera. Very quickly, the rabbi's soul departed. Afhu, also the executioner, kafatz, he jumped, v'nafal letoch ha'or, and he jumped into the fire and killed himself. Yatza'a bat kol ve'amra, a heavenly voice came out and said, Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion, the kalstinori and the executioner, mizumanin hen lechayel olam haba. They're both invited into the world to come. Rabbi, Bachari Rabbi Yehuda Nasi would cry when he heard this story. Ve'amar, Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'a achat. Some people acquire the world to come in one instant. V'yesh koneh olamo b'kama shanim. And some take a whole lifetime. So, besides for the obvious, tragic nature of the story, there's some glaring questions, I think. Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion said, when his student said to him, why don't you open your mouth and die quicker? He said, no. He said, I want to live longer. God will take me at the right time. And then when the executioner comes and says, can I kill you quicker? The rabbi says yes. The other thing is that the executioner was torturing the rabbi, and then all of a sudden, the next second, the rabbi is taking him along with him to Olam Haba. It's quite terrible. And the commentaries point out.
Oh, no, go ahead. After you finish, I have a question.
Thank you, Aaron. So the commentaries point out that there's obviously something very special about Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion. Obviously, these rabbis were giants of spirit and tremendously wise, but there's a ben adam l'chavero, man-to-man aspect of this story here. This executioner was torturing the rabbi just moments before, but then he had a change of heart and he expressed a sincere desire to repent. And the rabbi was okay with that. He was such a giant and such a compassionate person that when a person expressed a sincere desire to do teshuvah, the rabbi was willing to help him do teshuvah even while he's in the fire that the executioner had started. The second thing is that even though the rabbi had a personal wish to not give up his life sooner and to not hasten his death, he was willing to forego that luxury, if you could call it that, in order to facilitate the executioner doing teshuvah. So we see, again, our chachamim, even in their last moments, not only are they giants of faith and faithfulness to God, but also even man to man, even the most animalistic, the executioner, the person torturing him to death, he was willing to forgive him. Yeah, Dad, you had
No, just a very minute side point. One of the rabbis said that he, coming to the ma'ot, that shepurim nechlefu li b'ma'ot shel tzedakah. So the coins mixed purim and tzedakah, and then he dispersed them.
Meaning, so you have an obligation to give charity, and you have an obligation to give matanot le'evyonim ampurim.
Okay.
And you can't use your regular charity money to pay for matanot le'evyonim. So his matanot le'evyonim money got mixed with his regular charity.
Okay.
And instead of trying to figure out which was which, he gave all of that to charity, and he paid separately for matanot le'evyonim.
Oh, okay.
So if he usually gave $50 to this and $50 to this,
Okay.
he ended up paying $150.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the rabbi said that's a siman that you're going to go to Olam Haba. I just wanted to point out one small thing here. There's another version of this story that's brought in the Midrash with a slight difference, and I think it's an interesting difference, and I think there's lessons from both. When the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion said to him, she said, Abba, Rebecca, do I have to see you like this? He said, actually this is not so bad, because I was concerned if I was burned alone that, is somebody going to avenge me? Does God, am I assured that God, is going to avenge me? But when I burn with the Torah, now I know. The version in the Midrash, which is the next source on the page, is slightly different. It says, the students were standing there, this is the same thing. Okay? The students asked him, why are you crying? He said to them, he says, if I was being burned alone, I wouldn't have cried. But now, I'm being burned with the Sefer Torah, and he's saying that's why I'm crying. So you see different versions with different lessons. In the version in our Gemara, he says, what was he more certain of? He was more certain that God, cared about the Torah than him. He didn't think much of himself. He says, I don't know if God really cares about me, but I know that God cares about the Torah. So now that I'm with the Torah, I know for sure that God is, going to avenge me. In this story, it's slightly different, maybe even opposite. He says, it bothers me much more that the Torah is being burned than the fact that I'm being burned. Again, you see, tremendous emunah despite terrible affliction. I want to look at one more story, and then I want to turn to the Holocaust, which is a little bit of a parallel. The next story is the story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is perhaps the most famous of the 10
He risked
martyrs.
his life to learn Torah, even though that the Romans ripped his skin.
That's exactly the story here from the Gemara. Thank you, Aaron. So the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, rabbis, the evil kingdom, the Romans made a decree, the Jews are not permitted to learn Torah. Ba Papus ben Yehuda, a certain guy, he saw Rabbi Akiva teaching Torah publicly, he says to him, Akiva, aren't you scared of the kingdom?
Because he's like the fish.
Yes, that's right.
That needs the water.
We're going to read that right now, Aaron. You ready? So he says, he answers him, he says, I'm going to give you a mashal. What is this similar to? Lishu'al, like a fox, a fox who was walking along the river. He saw a fish, he saw the fish darting around in the river. The fox says to the fish, what are you running from? They said to him, from the nets, the humans are fishing us with the nets. So we're running around to get away from the nets. He says to them, don't you want to come up onto the dry land?
Without the water.
Exactly. He says, we'll live together. Like we used to live together in old times. They said to him, are you the one they say is the wisest, the most cunning of everybody? You're not smart. You're dumb.
He's trying to trick the fish.
Right. They said, the fish say to the fox, you're dumb. If in the place where we could survive in the water, we're scared. In the place of our death, on the dry land, all the more so. So we're not coming onto the dry land. So Rabbi Akiva says to this Jew, Papus ben Yehuda, says, Rabbi Akiva says, us too, us Jewish people, we're in Torah, which is said about it, this is your life. This is the length of your days. We're already scared. If we stop learning Torah, we'll be in much more danger. They said, Lo hayu yamim mu'atim. It was just a few more days. Until they arrested Rabbi Akiva, they put him in jail. They also arrested this Jew, Papus ben Yehuda, and he was in jail with Rabbi Akiva. So both Rabbi Akiva and Papus are in jail together. Amar lo, he said to him, Papus, mi heviach aleka? Rabbi Akiva says, Papus, who brought you here? Amar lo, ashrecha Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, you're fortunate. Shenitpasta al divrei Torah. You were arrested for divrei Torah. Oy lo le Papus. Woe to Papus. Shenitpasta al dvarim betelim. I was arrested for nonsense. He must have done something, illegal, and he got arrested for that. The time that they took Rabbi Akiva out to execute him was the time of Kriyat Shema. They were raking his skin with iron combs. He was nevertheless accepting upon himself the yoke of Shemayim. Yes. Amrulo Talmidav, the student said to him, Rabbeinu, Ad Kan, Rabbi, even now, you still doing this? Amar lahem, he said to them, Kol yamai hayiti mitzta'er al pasuk zeh. So my whole life I was distressed about a pasuk in the Torah. Bechol nafshecha, to serve God with all your soul. Afilu notel nishmatecha, even if God takes your soul. Amarti, I said to myself, Matay yavo li'adi v'chemena. When am I going to have this opportunity to give up my life for Hashem? V'achshav sheba li'adi. Now that I have the opportunity, lo ha'kaimenu, I shouldn't fulfill it. Hayam ma'arich be'echad. He said the word echad long. Ad sheyatzta nishmato be'echad. And his soul departed on that word. Yatzta bat chov ve'amra, a heavenly voice came out and said,
120 years old.
Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva, fortunate are you, Rabbi Akiva, sheyatzta nishmatecha be'echad, your soul departed on the word echad. Amru malachei asharet lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The heavenly angels confronted God and said, Zot hara v'zot schara. This is Torah and this is its reward. Mimitim yadecha Hashem mimitim. Hashem, you're murdering. Amar lahem chelkam b'chayim. He says he has a place in the world to come. Yatzah bat kol ve'amra heavenly voice came out and said, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva sheta mizuman l'chei olam haba. Fortunate are you, Rabbi Akiva, you're invited to the life in the world to come. So, again, throughout history, our great people, even in times of tremendous distress and tremendous oppression, stayed faithful to God. I wanted to share just a sample of a book called Mimam Hakim, From the Depths. There was a rabbi named Rabbi Ephraim Ashri. Actually, he survived the Holocaust, thank God, and he lived on the Lower East Side. My in-laws knew him, actually.
From 1939 to 1945.
And he was a rabbi in the Kovno ghetto. He was a young rabbi in the Kovno ghetto, and he said that there were 30,000 people in the Kovno ghetto, and he was a young rabbi, and despite the fact that they were in a ghetto and life was extremely oppressive, he says he was constantly getting, they didn't have enough food, he constantly got questions. He compiled questions that were asked to him and the answers that he gave, horrific questions, which just give you an idea of, number one, how bad things were, but number two, the tremendous emunah that the Jewish people had. And he wrote them on pieces of paper that he left and he rescued after the Holocaust, and he compiled 5 volumes of these questions. Unfortunately, the Kovno ghetto was liquidated and almost all of them were killed. He was fortunate to survive. His wife was sent to Auschwitz and she survived, and thank God they were united in America. And he says this book, he said, is just a, like I said, he said he realized when he was doing it, he didn't realize, but after he said he realized the historical importance of these questions. Number one, to prove what had happened, and number two, to prove the greatness of the Jewish people. So I want to, the first one, which is in no particular order, they're all very horrible but very beautiful. Start with one about, it looks like this, it says Siman Yutet on top, Bidun Giluach Hazakan B'Sakanat HaGhetto. The question of shaving one's beard and the danger of the ghetto. And he describes, he says, Kishehayinu Netunim B'Tzara V'Shivya, we were in distress and we were under the cursed German rule in the Kovno ghetto. He says that they came up with a thing. He says, every day they would come up with new things. He says, Hayeta achata to'anot, one of the things they said about us, shegolulu alenu, shemizuhamim anachnu, that we are infested, umeleim chola'a, we're full of diseases, v'lichluch, and we're dirty, v'gormim al-yidei kach l'hafatzatan shel kol minei machalot mitbaklot. And the Jews are the source of many contagious diseases. Okay, so not so different than now. They say, many anti-Semites say the Jews started COVID, and before that the Black Death, and over history, one of the very famous blood libels is that Jews spread disease. So he says that was one of the.
Wow, the Jews are brave.
The Nazis didn't think so. So they said that the Jews are full of contagious diseases. So he says, one of the main ways that they would express this, that they poured out their anger on us, any Jew that had a beard was especially the target of the Nazis when they said they're full of diseases, which was the custom of many religious people. It became an actual life-threatening danger for any person bearing a beard, to appear in the ghetto. If the cursed Nazis saw a Jew wearing a beard, he was immediately in the peril of danger of death. All of the people in the ghetto cut their beards. Even the rabbis and the giants of the Jewish people, the Chachamim, also shaved their beards, because they saw that it can cause them to be killed. I'm going to skip to the last paragraph on the page. It says, Rak Shnayim, 2 people in the ghetto kept their beard. Rak Shnayim, hayu ben kol yoshvei haghetto sheshamru al hadrat pnehem, on the glory of their face, their beard. V'lo haridu et zekanam. One was the chief rabbi of Kovno, Maran Rabbeinu Avraham Dov Ber Shapira. Hu lo harid et zekano. He didn't shave his beard. Beglal ha'uvda she'aya yadua umukar lemadeh lepritzei Gestapo. He says he was already known to the Gestapo. Everybody knew he was the chief rabbi. So he said, there's no point of me shaving my beard. I am already in danger. I'm already the chief rabbi. The next paragraph, the Hasheni, the other person, a very important lay person, Mechasidei Chabad, a Chabad follower, Rabbi Feivel Zusman, Hayashmo. Shesiken et atzmo, lamro shuzmar. Chabad are very strict about their beards. They never shave their beards for their whole life. And this great man, Rabbi Feivel Zusman, didn't want to shave his beard. And even though he realized it was very dangerous, he was able for some time to keep his, the glory of his face, the face of a Jew. In the end, he was captured. The Nazis did something called the Operation Children, the Kinder Axion, where Yamim Gimel V'Daled Nisan Tafshin Daled. Where the Nazis, the Gestapo, had a mission to go and search in all the hiding places, to go underground, on attics, to look for every single child that the Nazis decided to go and search for every child in hiding. On that day, he was also arrested. So he says that's the backdrop for the question. So the backdrop for the question is that all the Jews were forced, despite their love and their desire to have a beard, all of them were forced except for two, the rabbi who was already elderly and known, and one other person who decided not to shave his beard and unfortunately was killed. So the question that came to him was this. He says, in these crazy days, a person came to me, he was in a camp. He asked me what to do. There's not in that camp, there's no way to cut his beard except for a razor. He came to me with this question. He wanted to know, can he shave his face with a razor because of the sakana? Now, again, you would think, on the one hand, and the rabbi lengthily discusses the sides of it, and of course he says in the end, yes, he was permitted to do so, and he discusses what's the best way to do it. If you can do it with a scissor, anything. Can you have a non-Jew do it? Can you have another person do it? What's tremendous is that the person doesn't just say, my life's in danger, I'm getting a razor and getting my beard off as soon as possible. That even they ask the question, it shows the tremendous attachment and emunah that the Jewish people have to the Torah, even at the most horrible times. And the rabbi doesn't just simply say, yes, get that beard off with the razor. He says, no, I'm going to take your question seriously, because the rabbi understands that the emunah and that the Jews have in the Torah is what keeps them going. So that was the first question I wanted to share. The next question I wanted to share is the one that looks like this. It says, Siman Kava B'din Chatzitza L'Tfilin L'Chasot Ba Tovet Ka'aka Shti V'Erev Asarah. This one is very, very painful one. He says, this is a question about tefillin. He says, the question that was asked to him was this. He says, Medarkam shel harotzchim harurim. He says, the way of the Nazis, Hayal lehovil et hayudim shayu nikbasim la'avodat akviyah. He says they would take the Jews that were in forced labor, b'ishon layla, when it was still night, before dawn, b'fnei alot hashachar, la'avodat akviyah, to this back-breaking labor, kach shelo hayat alehem afsharu la'aniach tefillin, so that they would not have time to put on tefillin. Apparently, the Nazis knew that tefillin was put on after dawn, so they would take them out to work before dawn. Before they would go out to work, they would take them out early. They would make them work all day, with back-breaking labor, until late at night. So the Nazis were purposely making it that the Jews would miss their opportunity to put on tefillin. He says there were some amongst the forced laborers, Shazru Oz, who were bold, who were brazen, le'aniach tefillin v'hachbeh, that would secretly put on tefillin, be'et halichatam la'avodah, while they were marching to work, techef mishehir hayom, immediately as the day broke. So again, imagine the Nazis purposely made the schedule so you couldn't put on tefillin. Imagine what they would do to somebody that they caught. And nevertheless, some people bravely put on their tefillin. Ulam kara hamikre. There was one case. Shagirmanim tafsu et echad me'avdim. They caught one of the workers, kishu meniach tefillin be'et halichato, that he was putting on tefillin while he was walking. Ula'achar she'inuhu b'chol minei inuyim. After they tortured him with all different types of torture, lo nidkarra da'atam. They weren't satisfied. Ad shecharatu al yado hasmalit, until they took his left hand, bakiboret, on the place where you put the tefillin, shtiva erev, crisscross, a swastika. Kach she'i afshar hayalo legalot et yado l'shem anchat tefillin. He couldn't put on his tefillin, that people that are bystanders would see it. So thank God this person survived the Holocaust. And he came to the rabbi and said, I'm embarrassed that every time I put on my tefillin, I have a swastika on my arm. So he asked, he wanted to know if he could put a bandage on this embarrassing symbol. Put his tefillin over the bandage, because normally you can't have anything separated between the skin and the tefillin. Anybody that's looking will think they'll think he has a wound on his arm. He said, so the person that's asking this question is saying, is that a chatzitza or she'en lachush lazeh? So again, this is a person who risked his life to put on tefillin in the Holocaust, and now after the Holocaust is coming and asking the rabbi, can I put a bandage? Again, most of us, God forbid it should never be, but we wouldn't put on tefillin, and then we put on tefillin after we were arrested and after the Holocaust, and then would we even ask? Wouldn't we just cover it? But again, the greatness of the Jewish people. So the rabbi, his answer was, he said, put on your tefillin at home and wear them to shul. And if you can't, he says, yes, you can cover it. But again, just the tremendous spirit of the Jewish people. There's nobody like the Jewish people.
But what about non-religious Jews?
What about them?
Like, that they don't do the Jewish laws?
So we pray that they one day also do the Jewish laws.
Like at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that's one of the reasons why it was destroyed, and because of Bar Kamsa.
Right. So you have to pray that everybody gets along. So the next one I want to look at is the one that says Siman Bet on top. I think this is perhaps the most emotional one that I saw. The case here was, and the rabbi describes it at length, that there was in the ghetto, there was a family, a couple that had a child. He was 16 years old, and the Nazis came. They killed both parents in front of the child, but they were able to get their housekeeper, who was not Jewish, to adopt their son. And
That's not good.
no, but she rescued him from the Nazis, so that was good.
But that's a Holocaust survivor.
Mm-hmm. So the rabbi said that this family was arrested and they killed the parents, and the son was taken in by the housekeeper. And it says that the son had no rest, he had no calm, he saw his parents were killed, and he was worried at any moment that his housekeeper might, turn him over. At a certain point, she did not turn him over, but she was nervous. She said she couldn't hold him any longer, so she brought him to a priest. And she said to the priest, please convert him to Christianity and let him live, with you, and nobody will know.
Why not any of his relatives?
Because it was the Holocaust, so unfortunately they were all killed also. So the priest took him in.
Was the priest a good person?
Mm-hmm. He rescued the boy.
Was he a Jewish person?
No, he was not Jewish. So we're going to read a little bit, Aaron, okay? So he says he did did the water, he did the baptism, and he converted him. So the priest listened. Okay, he converted him, and he spent some time there. He was working in the church, and nobody knew. Nobody was able to tell he was Jewish, and he was very safe.
But he can't work in the church. It's not, he's Jewish.
Aaron, you're thinking like the young boy.
He,
That's exactly what he said. Listen to the story.
but what, did you know him?
I didn't know.
Uh,
Listen, Aaron. Right? He says, Ulam Hanar, this young boy, he was not at peace. Even though he was safe, he was not at peace because he saw all sorts of idols and all sorts of crosses, and he was forced to be a Christian. And it says he had tremendous odman nefesh from it. He couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, he couldn't take the life line that he was given. So it says, Ubechad hayamim, one day, Asarah oz b'nafsho, he got up to courage. Azav et makom migurav, he ran, he escaped the church, and he came to the Kovno ghetto. You think, again, the greatness of the Jewish people. This young boy, he couldn't bring himself to live in the church. He couldn't do it. So he went and brought himself back into danger and went to the Kovno ghetto. And he said, okay, whatever happens, I want to be with the Jews. Whatever the fate of the Jews is going to be, that's what I want. I don't want to be with the Christians.
But did he survive the war?
We're going to see Aaron. So the question that he asked, this young boy, the young boy was a Kohen. And when he got to the Kovno ghetto, he asked the rabbi, he said, I was living as a Christian, am I permitted to do Birkat Kohanim and to go up to the Torah as a Kohen? Or because I was living as a Christian, am I pasul? Did I lose my Kohen status? Again, this is what's on the mind of the great Jewish people. So I'm going to fast forward to the end of the question. The rabbi says in the end, and again, it's a lengthy 8-page teshuvah, lengthy discussion. He says he permitted him to do Kohanim and go up to the Torah. And he ends off, he says, "V'achem kiyem oto na'ar b'nafsho et hamitzvah hagdola." He says, this young boy merited to fulfill a great mitzvah because he ended up being, able to do Birkat Kohanim and go up to the Torah. He says, unfortunately, on the last paragraph, he says, "V'hi b'yom tisul haghetto," the day that they liquidated the ghetto, b'shnat tafshin daled, כשהגרמנים הארורים הוציאו להורג שארית הפליטה, when the Nazis wanted to kill anybody remaining in the ghetto. This is one of the first groups that they liquidated. This young boy was in that group. And unfortunately, him and all the young men that were with him, he says, is what we just read in Echa, Hanehavim Hanimim, the most beloved and the most pleasant B'chayahem in their lifetime. A pasuk that it says, that David says about Shaul and Yonatan, that the most beautiful and the most beloved people to Hashem were united in death. Meaning this young boy decided he would rather die a Jewish death than to live a non-Jewish life. And he came, and unfortunately he was part of the first group that was liquidated. The last one I want to share,
He passed away.
he passed away. The last one is that the question is, we should never need this beracha, of course, is what's the beracha that you say when you're about to be killed? Al Kiddush Hashem. So Shema we say, and there's actually a blessing that we say also. So he says that this question came to him. He says a person asked this question to him. He says the Nazis came to Kovno. He says, and they made them all come to the city square, the Demokratiaplatz, which was in the ghetto, for the Nazis to count everybody. And he says that the whole city was gathered there, 30,000 people. And he says that there was somebody there. Sorry, I just want to find the correct. And he says you can't even imagine the fear. He says every house was emptied parents have to drag their children, and everybody, the young people bring the elderly, everybody coming to the city square. He says you can't imagine the screams and the crying that's going on. 30,000 people packed into one place. He says v'yom zeh hayom sagrir. He describes the day like he's still there. He says it was an overcast day. The sufa hageshem v'asheleg. There was rain and snow. Itku biyachad min hashamayim. He says ki'ilu yoshvei marom b'shnei aravot malachei mala meshate'el. He says it was as if those who were in Shamayim, the angels, they were also scared from what was happening on this day. And he says they were all gathered there, 30,000 people waiting for their fate to be decided by the murderous Nazis. And he says there was a guy there named Roca. He says he was the selector that worked for the Gestapo. He says the fate of the whole ghetto was in his hands. The same way he says the way a sculptor holds a sculpture, that's how this guy was holding the fate of the Jewish people. So he says while this is going on, he says somebody came over to him. His name was Rabbi Eliyahu mi Warsaw. He says he escaped the Warsaw ghetto and he came to the Kovno ghetto. Right? He thought, again, the way the Nazis were moving throughout Europe, you didn't know where they were going to go to next. So he escaped the Warsaw ghetto thinking that the Kovno ghetto would be safe. Unfortunately, the Nazis reached there as well. They reached Lithuania. And so he said this was not his first rodeo. He said, I've been at one of these selections before. He says we're not going to make it. So he said to the rabbi, what's the beracha? He said, should it be al kiddush Hashem or le kadesh et Hashem? He says, tell the people what they should say when they get killed. So again, you see, with everything going on, all the chaos, their minutes counting down on their lives. This person comes to the rabbi and asks him, what the beracha should I say? And spreading the word amongst the people so that they should be prepared. Again, we shouldn't need to know the answer, but the rabbi answered that the beracha is hamekadesh emo berabim. That is the beracha that he said. We should answer that's on the last page here. Unfortunately, this person that came and asked him the question, he says that when he told the rabbi the answer, when the rabbi told the person the answer, it says the person started practicing. So he started practicing it so that he would know it. And he also was going around to other people and teaching it to them so that everybody would know it, so that they will be able to say it. And he says the dubious honor he had. He says that after some time, he heard that Rabbi Hanon, who was one of the most famous rabbis in Europe, who was also killed by the Lithuanians, he said that he heard from the bystanders that he ruled the same beracha, that the same beracha that he had said to his ghetto to say, Rabbi Hanon, the greatest rabbi of the generation, had said, and that also, and so his ruling was corroborated. Again, not an honor he was looking forward to, but it confirmed that he had given the correct ruling. So again, we see from both in the time of the Talmud with the great rabbis, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Hanon ben Teradyon, and all the rabbis that died on Kiddush Hashem, that they maintain their spirit, they maintain their ethics, their morals, their devotion, and the same is true the Torah, of course.
That they love Torah so much.
100%. And that no less than the great Tanaim, the Jewish people in the Holocaust, even regular people, were giants of spirit and held on to their faith. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, the mourning that we do today, mourning the destruction and the Holocaust and all the terrible things, may be the last time, and this should be the last Tish'a.